Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Can a comprehensive plan for the riverfront finally be executed? Tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes, publisher of the Memphis Daily News. Thanks for joining us. I'm joined tonight by the new president of the Memphis River Parks Partnership, formerly the Riverfront Development Corporation, Carol Coletta. Thank you for being here.
Glad to be here.
Along with Bill Dries, senior reporter with the Memphis Daily News. The name of the Riverfront Development Corporation, which has been around for quite some time, or actually this is one of the first moments where you all have unveiled it. You took the presidency, we're taping this on Tuesday, but it's airing on Friday, and so you just took the job today, is that correct?
I did.
Yeah.
501.
Well, congratulations. Let's talk big picture, and then we'll dive into all the parts of the river, because I think there is an interesting dynamic with the riverfront, that when I say riverfront to any given person, they think of one or another part of it. And what RDC, what now the partnership has influence over is a much broader, I believe 6 miles of parks and open spaces and so on. Your vision for it at the highest level, why will this plan, and I've heard you joke about other plans that have been proposed, why will this plan work?
It's interesting. We did our first riverfront plan in 1924. So we are almost 100 years out from the first plan. And there certainly have been things done along the riverfront in those years. But what we've never done is taken advantage of the fact that Memphians, together, we own 6 miles of riverfront property. That's almost unheard of in American cities. Not only do we own it, it's clean. We don't have to remediate this land. So what we haven't done is we haven't joined it up and made one connected riverfront. We like to say 6 miles, 5 park districts, 1 Memphis. And that's what we're really going for on the riverfront. So what Studio Gang, the Chicago-based architecture and design firm, did for the city of Memphis under Alan Crone's leadership last fall is put together a concept for the riverfront for all 6 miles that really make it really involves a series of small, connected, elegant moves to join up the riverfront so that it really can be catalytic for the city of Memphis.
And what does it take, and we'll, as we talk about this, there's some renderings and some visions that Studio Gang, the design firm, put together. I think we just saw one from the cobblestone area, which is a kind of unexceptional area, but as they've envisioned it, they're planting in trees and much more activated and accessible to the public, and that's true of all the proposals. So many questions. One is how to pay for it. How to pay for all these things that are being proposed.
Well, first of all, I think it's really important to understand that when you say who will pay for it, what this doesn't include is some big magic silver bullet, right? That's the $100 million plus project that sits there on the riverfront, disconnected from everything else. We are not putting our eggs in one basket. Again, this is a series of small, connected, elegant moves along the riverfront. So if you look at a first phase of the riverfront, what we think of as first phase being Tom Lee Park, a safer, more pleasant, more beautiful Riverside Drive, Cobblestones, Mississippi River Park, just north of the Cobblestones, a boathouse, and Wagner Street Market. If you look at that as a first phase, which is a pretty big first phase, that will make a big difference to Memphians, I think. That's a $65 million investment to do all of that. And you know, where you really get your leverage on projects like this is not the grand gesture that people will visit once or twice a year and then later years, you know, when the visitor comes to town. but rather that thing that you're going to use over and over and over again, the daily use, because that's what people want to work near, it's what they want to live near, and so that's where you really get the financial and the social leverage. So, and that's what we have proposed on the riverfront.
And people can, I think we've had Jim Strickland on, and maybe others who've talked about this whole plan for a TDZ, a tourism development zone, that would, a lot of that money you're talking about would come from that. So it's tax dollars, right, that sales tax dollars that would otherwise go to the state, stay, and in Memphis, other cities in Tennessee have used this to their benefit. I think Chattanooga did a lot of its riverfront using that. There's private foundation money, am I correct? There's
You're answering the question I didn't answer.
Yeah, but no, and that's fine. But you correct me where I'm wrong. And people can go to your website, and we've written about it. Bill's certainly written about it, because we'll have Jim Strickland on in a couple weeks, and we'll talk about this. And he's very quick to say this is not going to be paid by some increase in the property tax dollars, right? I mean, that's maybe a question that we'll get to him in, I think, 2 weeks when he's on. But it's not a $65 million check that the city of Memphis is writing.
Not at all. Okay. This will be a combination of public and private money, and the public money will, we anticipate, will come from an expansion of the existing TDZ, the Tourism Development Zone, that takes state tax dollars that are collected anyway, already being collected, but they're sent to the state. In this case, they would stay in Memphis for use by Memphians on a set of public and private partnerships along the riverfront.
Okay, Bill Drees.
So do you, in terms of what gets leveraged, if you have private money, philanthropic money that says this is what we want to do in partnership with this plan, is it the availability of that determines kind of the staging of different parts of what you're trying to do with the riverfront?
Yes, although I think it's the staging is going to be very important. What you want to do is do something that Memphians will most enjoy and most recognize as the beginning of a transformation for our riverfront. I think you want to do something that's close to downtown, and in the heart of downtown, because that is catalytic to downtown. On the other hand, I think it's important to note that the way we're imagining the riverfront extends all the way to South Memphis, because we believe if the riverfront doesn't play a catalytic role, right? If it doesn't get us, X++ in terms of its impact, then it's really not doing what it needs to do for the citizens of Memphis. So it needs to increase the value of living and the quality of life around both downtown as well as the disinvested neighborhoods at the north and the south ends of our riverfront.
I'm going to interrupt Bill, just say we will put a map up that shows at least part of what you're talking about, stretching from the tip of Harbortown, Mud Island, where the Wolf River
North
Conservancy
end.
and what the viewers will see is because it's a small map, but it's important. To the right there is the north tip of Harbortown, where Wolf River Greenway meets, and then going through downtown, it shows the Harahan Bridge to the left there. So that, just to give people some scale, and MLK Riverside is south of the bridge. So that map that shows so much of what you're talking about doesn't even show all of it.
Doesn't even show all of it.
Yeah, but just to give people context, back to you, Bill.
So Mud Island River Park opened for the season this past weekend, and there were a few changes. There are longer hours. Dogs are allowed in the park, and one thing that caught my eye was the museum. The museum is going to be open through July, and then you begin taking a look at the museum at that point.
Yes, it will be open for a limited run this season until July 4th, where we have the big fireworks display with our friends at the Convention and Visitors Bureau. And then we're going to put it on pause, and we're going to think about, along with a number of citizens that we will call upon, including teenagers who, after all, own the future of the town, and say, how do you tell the story of the Mississippi River, its history, its folklore, its ecology, etc.? How do you tell that in a 21st century way? I mean, this museum, I sort of love it. It's very quaint, it's nostalgic, it's sweet. Everybody remembers a good time they had at the Mississippi River Museum on Mud Island. But it's really time to think about, we still have animatronics
Yeah.
So
Dioramas.
yes, exactly. Really old school technology, all of which could be incorporated right into a new telling of the story. But there's been a lot of focus, as you know, over the last couple of years on Mud Island and how people, some of it is hand-wringing, some of it is trying to reimagine a whole new use for the island. There's been talk of an aquarium. So we think it's a great time to just pause it and sort of take a breath and do a couple of design sprints around how could we tell this story. But when we put the museum on pause July 4th, we're also going to flip the learning and the opportunity to explore the Mississippi River and its history and folklore and its ecology to outdoors. So the programs won't stop. They will just resume outdoors while we think about what ought to be indoors.
Right, and the museum has been talked about as possibly a part of the aquarium project, just in the very tentative discussions so far about it. So is that still the plan, or is that going to be incorporated into whatever happens with it?
Oh, it's a great question, and we don't know enough about the aquarium or whether it will happen, how it will happen, if it did. So I think what we need to do is make sure that in our initial planning for Mud Island, we don't cut off great opportunities for the future, but we also don't put it on pause forever, right? So we want to continue to find uses, great uses for the citizens of Memphis for Mud Island. I was over there on Sunday when it was really cold, even with gloves and a hat. And there were people there. There were lots of people there enjoying Mud Island, which, so, it says something about the lure of being out in the middle of the Mississippi River. That's a winner. That's a home run. So this year we're, like you said, we're allowing dogs in. We're open till sunset, till 8 o'clock. And I think it's going to be a whole new experience out there this year.
Go ahead, Bob.
You talked about the staging, and I think one thing that is critical about what you talked about is this is not a build it and the visitors will come and will drop all of their cash here, which we've certainly been guilty of in the past. How do you make a sense of place that includes everyone on, as you said, 6 miles of real estate here?
Well, the interesting thing is today, the riverfront does include everyone. I mean, if you go to the riverfront on any given Sunday, you're going to see every shape, every age, every color, every family grouping on our riverfront. That's what makes it so amazing. I mean, it's this just enormous, mixing bowl of people, and I love it for that reason. And you can bring your picnic. You don't have to pay any money to get in. It really is public space, which I love. So what we have to do, I think, is create a little more form, a little more shape, a little more shade in places to give people, different wonderful experiences while they're there. But keep in mind, we can't think any longer of the riverfront as being different from downtown. These places have to be joined up. I would say we can't think about the riverfront different from South Memphis. I mean, or North Memphis. Look at Uptown. It's right there on the harbor. So we need to start thinking about how all these things join together and what we do on the riverfront that makes sense on the riverfront versus what we do in downtown or South Memphis or North Memphis that makes sense. And join it all up and let people have a great experience and let it, again, be catalytic so that it's driving value and quality of life.
We'll walk through some of the sections that you've talked about. I think we have a map of the Greenbelt Park area that zooms in on what we were looking at before. And that park, it's funny, it's a park I go to fairly often. And it's amazing how many people don't know that park's up there, that on Harbor Town, and that all that is, that whole area, which is probably some of the wealthiest homes in Memphis, but also some that aren't. I mean, it is truly a mixed use, and it is, as you said, an incredibly diverse park that so many people just don't know about. Part of the reason they don't know about it, it's not very accessible. I mean, you can buy a car, but what people will see, I think the blue line there, is ways in which that park connects to the rest of downtown. Talk about that. I guess what's it called? The River Line is the name for this line that will connect all the way through the areas we're talking about.
That's right. We are one of the projects that we're building now. Both Memphis River Parks Partnership and the City of Memphis Housing and Community Development together are building something we call the River Line. That will be a pedestrian and bike path that will take you from Confluence Park on the north, which is where the Wolf River dumps into the Mississippi River, and the Wolf River Green Line ends at the Mississippi River. So from Confluence Park all the way down Greenbelt Park, you can ride on into Mud Island and to the tip if you want to, but then you can also go over the A.W. Willis Bridge, circle back around through the Coast Guard property and behind the flood wall, one of my favorite places, so flood wall at the Pyramid. Behind the flood wall, come right out at Tennessee Welcome Center, go into Mississippi River Park, which will get under construction June 1st. It's going to be a fabulous jewel of a park. Come down Cobblestone Walkway into Tomley Park, up Ashburn Coppock around to Martyrs Park, where you get this gorgeous view of Big River Crossing, and then over Big River Crossing and eventually on street to MLK.
Right, and people see that last part there, and I think a lot of people now have been on Big River Crossing, the Harahan Bridge.
Oh, yeah.
But a number of those areas you talked about, I bet the percentage of Memphians who've been down there walking on a bike is minuscule.
Well, sometimes
Right?
they're there and they don't know they're there.
Well,
I mean,
but
you know,
so-
they,
right,
they
and
wouldn't
that-
know
that's part-
Ashburn Coppock Park.
Right.
What is that? But they
Right.
sort of know the south end of Tom Lee
Right.
has a big point.
Right.
And so
One area that there was some concern, there was some consternation was last year for much of the summer, Riverside Drive was closed with a park that had basketball courts and places to sit, and some people, not everyone, were upset about that. Is part of this plan that part of Riverside Drive, one, will it be closed again and will it be closed permanently? And two, what is the vision through all this for Riverside Drive, which is right now 2 lanes each way, a relatively fast. At one point during the Wharton administration, it was closed down temporarily to 2 lanes with some bike paths. It was a little bit awkwardly executed, I think most people would say. What's the vision for Riverside?
that's a great question. Riverside Drive, I think, is something that it's an iconic street in Memphis. The problem is you have an expressway on the north and an expressway on the south, both of which dump out into Riverside Drive, which means people are going, and they don't get stopped by a light. If you're coming from the south, for instance, you don't get stopped by a light until you get to Beale Street. Now, what that means is that people are going still at expressway speeds. Even though the lanes are a little narrower, they're going way too fast for to allow pedestrians to cross safely from downtown to Riverfront and back again. So I think our goals should be to make Riverside Drive more beautiful, make great view sheds through Tom Lee Park. You never want to destroy that view. It's the welcome to Memphis view, right? But you can make it a prettier view with creating some view sheds there, which means you need some trees, and that gives people in the park shade. You want to slow down the traffic. It will never get slowed down with signs. It will never get slowed down with speed tables. You really need to, through design, get the speeds lower so you get a safer Riverside Drive, you get a better connection from downtown to the riverfront. And that will be our goal. That, to me, does not mean we close Riverside Drive. I want to be clear about that. Look, it's in all of our interests to have more people living and working in downtown and playing in downtown. So we don't want to discourage people from coming downtown. Right. We want them downtown. We just want them to come in and once they get out of their car, be safe and have a really pleasant experience.
Before I go back to Bill, we'll bring up, I think we showed it earlier, a rendering of the cobblestone area, the cobblestones, which now are kind of desolate, hard to get down there. I don't know that, you talk about safety of walking, not so much safety of anything else, but that's a view from downtown towards Mud Island. So you see that the cobblestone area can be planted, and that just the beautification things that you're talking about, I think that is a good representation for people of what you're discussing. But also there's access. There's a potential pedestrian bridge from downtown over to Mud Island, something that's been talked about in various forms many, many times. Is that a reality in this new iteration of the Riverfront Development Corporation and this plan?
Well, let me defend the cobblestones a little bit. You call them desolate. We do have 6 football fields.
Did I say that?
You did, you did. You've said it twice now. I'm counting. And I just want to say that I think a lot of people, particularly those who really value built, physical history, would look at those cobblestones and say they are an amazing historic asset for our city. And if you really look at the cobblestones, I mean, yes, 6 football fields of cobblestones, that's a lot. And yes, on a hot day, they're hot. But I will also say they're really quite fascinating, and there are all sorts of patterns. I mean, so much so that Studio Gang, the firm that did the Riverfront concept, is taking cobblestones that we've had in storage to the Venice Biennale this year and featuring our cobblestones there in an exhibition called Stone Stories in the U.S. Pavilion, which is a very big deal. They will return them to us in November, and I think they become even more valuable after having been on international display. So now let me get to your question. I think we will have to negotiate what kind of shade we can put on the cobblestones, what kind of shade we would want to put on the cobblestones, given they are a historic resource. But I think those are things we should all work together on. In terms of the pedestrian bridge to Mud Island, I think there has long been an interest in exploring the harbor as a lake, right? As a stable body of water at a stable level. You know what happens when the river rises and falls, which it does 50 feet here at Memphis, and that means the harbor rises and falls. The river rises, we get all the debris that people in, up north, right, have sent our way. So our river becomes not only full of driftwood and things, that's great. Not so great when it gets plastic bottles and every other piece of garbage people have decided to, release into the river. So we'd love to have a stable lake and activate that lake. Whether we can do it, at a cost that makes sense, is still up for grabs. There are ways you could do a pedestrian bridge to Mud Island that wouldn't be as costly as doing a lake. But those are but they're still working. They're businesses, including the U.S. Coast Guard, that use the harbor and need that open. So there's still work to be done. That's not a first phase piece.
Right. Okay, 4 minutes left to go back to Bill.
So if the harbor becomes a lake, would the bridge then function as some kind of control on the water level? Is that how that would work?
You're asking a non-engineer. Don't ask me. It's not in phase 1, which means I've got my hands full right now. But again, there are people interested in that, and we'll explore it.
Okay. Changes to Tom Lee Park. Do you have to step carefully there because of Memphis in May being there?
You have to step very carefully. And what we said we want to do, and we're committed to doing, is form a partnership with Memphis in May. We want Memphis in May to be the greatest festival it can be. That's good for the riverfront, right? That's good for Memphis. So what we want to do, and we've been working with Memphis in May hand in glove to do this on kind of the early stages of thinking about what we do with Tom Lee Park. We brought in festival consultants who've worked on big outdoor festivals to say, how could we, one, make a great festival ground for Memphis in May, cost them less to produce, give them the infrastructure they need, and help them get in and out of the park rapidly. Do that and provide a great park for Memphians 365 days a year. I think we and Memphis in May are now convinced we can do that. So we are just about to complete that work, and that will give us a great basis for going with the design schematics for Tom Lee Park.
We'll talk just a couple minutes left. I mentioned it earlier, is MLK Riverside Park, a park that too many Memphians have never seen. I think I saw your suggestion once. And it is, because I'm now being more careful with my word choices, it is anything but a desolate park, but it is isolated. It is one of those parks that was cut off by the highway, the damage of highways to cities all over the country. That is one that really suffered, and it's just been suffered from inattention. But it is an absolutely beautiful park that goes back, it's of the same era as Overton Park, I believe. And what can be done to open that park up, make people aware of it, access to it. Certainly many people who do go there love it. I'm not saying there aren't people who go there, but so many Memphians don't know about it.
Well, let me say, most Memphians have seen it. They just don't know they've seen it because they've driven by it at a high speed, and it's on the expressway. Because unlike Overton Park, as you said, it did suffer an expressway going through it. It clipped off the edge of the park. And as you said, what now is MLK Park and Overton Park were the original farms that were bought by the city of Memphis and then connected by the parkway. That's where the parkway system came from. So over the years, MLK Park has not gotten the love and attention that it should have. It is a magnificent park with topography not unlike some in Shelby Forest. It has forest that is 10 minutes on a slow bike from downtown. It's incredible.
Yeah, it has hills. It's one of the most striking things about it.
I know. It's like, oh my goodness, who knew there were hills 10 minutes? Thank goodness for Fraser and MLK Park. Hills. So I think what we are going to look at, and keep in mind, we don't manage that park. That park is managed by the Division of Parks and Neighborhoods by the city of Memphis. But what we want to do is, as we say in our name, we want to create partnerships. And in this case, we want a partnership with the city of Memphis. Maria Munoz Blanco is all in, so that we can make a great park for citizens.
We'll do a whole show on that someday.
We should.
Okay, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. Join us again next week.